All right, we're back with Chuck Hanson from Erie Insurance. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing well, thank you, Pat.
When was the last time you were here?
Well, yeah, I'm afraid to say, I think it was about 6 months ago.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, and I don't know, somebody did something with the calendar, because last I knew it was April. All of a sudden,
It flew by, didn't it?
Oh, boy.
It flew by.
It's incredible how fast this, I mean, my dad used to say that all the time, and as I get older, I realize that, but this year particularly, this seems to. Hey, I kind of caught the tail end of your broadcast this morning. Did I hear some good news? Somebody's planning an expansion?
Yes. Connet Leather over here on the east side.
Oh, wow.
35,000 square feet.
Excellent.
Up to 10 to 15 more jobs. This is in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's the way we want to go. And also General Aluminum's talking about expansion too. So, I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I've got some good feelings about Connet. I mean, I see a lot more pride in ownership around town.
Yep.
People taking care of their property and, like you said, expansion, and that's certainly the kind of good news that we need. And a lot of good activities this year in Connet, you know.
Actually, Tim Eggleston made the really announcement here last week, I think it was, when he was on the show, and it came out of nowhere. You know, sometimes you hear, well,
you hear rumors.
You hear rumors, yeah. But when you have confirmation from the actual president of the company and from the city manager, you know they're going to be working together to try to make something happen. And you know that somebody made a remark after it was announced. Well, 10 or 15 jobs. I go, hey, that's 10 or 15 jobs we didn't have. You know. I
mean, and usually the old saying used to be, for every 10 jobs, it creates one additional job, maybe in the service industry, restaurant. Service station, doctor's office, whatever. I mean,
exactly.
And I see we're getting an express care in town.
Yes.
And I belong to Rotary, and I couldn't be there that night when they honored you with a Project Pride, but I was real proud to hear that.
We were so happy.
Yeah.
As you know, because you're my insurance man for many, many years, when we moved into that house, we were renting, so I had to get rental insurance from Chuck. And as you know, when we first moved in there was no grass. It was all mud, you know. So it's come a long way. It took us a while to do it, but it's been fun, you know. And to get honored like that, it made Michelle and I very happy.
Yeah, I was real happy to hear that. I was out of town that day because I wanted to be there, but I couldn't. So
yeah, it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat.
Good.
Now, we are expected to get some very nasty weather later today, and I imagine in your business, you always kind of watch that stuff because these storms can sneak up on you.
Yeah, we do. We have concerns, and a lot of insurance companies will notify their agents that if there is a pending storm, they maybe can't add certain coverages on. Like if somebody wanted to get flood insurance and it was predicted it was going to flood that afternoon, they may not be able to get it depending on what the insurance company says. Or if there's a tornado on the way and they want to
suddenly want tornado.
Right, exactly. So
do you have many people that get that?
Well, that comes with most all policies, but someone who maybe has a piece of property that hasn't been insured and they're hearing on the radio or the TV that it's going to storm and then call up and say, gee, I need it right away. Again, sometimes the insurance companies put a moratorium on it.
But I can understand that, you know. Yeah. You know, the other thing too is we've always often talked about earthquake insurance. And can you explain that again? Because it's been a while since we've talked.
Well, it's a separate coverage that can be added to a typical homeowner's policy. Again, if there's been an earthquake, most insurance companies will put a moratorium on for 7 days because of the aftershocks. So if we had an earthquake yesterday and you wanted to add earthquake insurance on your policy today, I'd have to tell you, gee, I can't do it for 7 days. We've had a lot of seismic activity in this area, but fortunately we've never had anything real serious. I think the worst one we had was in 69 maybe, or 89, 99.
There was one.
79.
There was one in, I think, in 80. There was one in 84 or 5, and then there was another one in 89.
89.
And then we had another one recently, but I think that was towards Youngstown, but we felt the tremor here. That was a couple summers ago.
Yeah, the one in '89 is, and boy, my memory's getting terrible, but that was very powerful, but it only lasted like 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it registered 5 on the Richter scale, which can be massive if it lasts very long. So we've had the seismic activity, but fortunately it's either not been severe on the Richter scale or it's been a very short duration. So
I remember the one we had, it must have been 84, 85, because I was working nights at the Star Beacon and I was in bed. It was during the day, and I remember thinking I was dizzy or something, but it was actually the house shaking, you know. And I remember my dad being very upset. Of course, he was pretty sickly then, but he was very upset. It shook him up pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
And but yeah, it's a funny feeling when these things hit. So do people get these for on their plans, Chuck?
Yeah, a lot of people have earthquake insurance. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. Let's say some. For instance, I have it because I still have a small mortgage on my house, and I figured, well, if my house was destroyed, how could I pay off the mortgage and turn around and buy another house if I didn't have the earthquake insurance?
Mm-hmm.
So,
but you say that wasn't it? It's $5,000 deductible. Is that?
No. Most companies offer a 5% deductible. Our main company, Erie Insurance, offers a 2% deductible. And that deductible is not applied to the claim, it's applied to the amount of coverage. So on a $100,000 house, you'd either have a $2,000 deductible if you were with Erie Insurance, or you'd have a $5,000 deductible. But the alternative way to look at it is right now, if you don't have any coverage, you got a 100% deductible.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a $100,000 house and no earthquake, then you got a $100,000 deductible.
Right,
you know?
right.
So yeah, we've been pretty fortunate in this area. We've not had.
I don't think I have that earthquake.
I don't know, Pat. I'd have to check and see.
I don't think I do.
But I say, knock on wood. We've been, and you and I talk about this all the time. We're pretty fortunate to live in Conneaut. We don't get the real drastic weather.
Right.
We get the tail end of some of them. I mean, we get a lot of windstorms and ice storms.
We've been lucky, really.
Yeah.
We've missed out on some of that stuff.
We sure have. So.
Yeah.
You know, Pat, we were talking about some of the improvements around town. I noticed coming over this morning that they started some of the grinding down and getting ready to pave some of the streets.
Yep.
And, so that's looking good. And you got the improvements to the old City News.
Yeah.
And I guess we're going to get another restaurant in town. And I understand that the Mexican restaurant's doing very well. Or
Yeah, I'm getting good reviews.
Yeah.
Really good
That's
reviews.
good.
Yeah, it's funny, Chuck. When I took a movie back to Starlight this morning, I wasn't paying attention, and I drove on to Washington Street, not realizing that it was ground up. It was like driving on the moon, man. It was crater time, but it wasn't blocked off, so I guess it was okay to drive on. But yeah, and you know, they claim they can knock all this work down that's earmarked for this year in 2 weeks.
wow,
That's amazing.
it is.
It'll be
It
good
is.
to get it fixed.
Well, of course, if they can dedicate the crews to it, that would be. That was a problem the city always had. Was
Didn't have any manpower.
well, they don't have any manpower. Number one, and number two, some emergency might come up, and all of a sudden you've got to take the crew off of paving and put them somewhere else.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I'm very happy with that, and I guess they're going to do some major work to a street over by me, Williams Street. No relation.
oh yeah.
Williams Street's got a bunch of work that needs done because they had to cut it up last year or something, dig it up. So they'll be doing that. I think he said that they'll start working on that Thursday. I can't remember.
That's been rough for several years now.
Oh, yeah. So was Lakeview Avenue. Lakeview Avenue
Correct.
was a mess,
Correct.
but now it's really nice. They paved it. It's really nice. Got some other questions about insurance, Chuck. I wanted to ask you. Life insurance. I keep getting letters in the mail from these national companies who are trying to sell you life insurance.
Well, this is Life Insurance Awareness Month, the month of September.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, so there's always a big push by the insurance industry to promote their products. I forget the actual percentage. I just read it, and it's something like 60 to 70% of people in the United States are either have very little life insurance, or excuse me, not enough life insurance, or no life insurance. So their focus during the month of September is pretty much educational and promoting products and saying, hey, take a look. It might be less expensive than what you think. There's a lot of new products out there. And life insurance is one of the few insurance products that over the last 10 years pricing has gone down on.
Really?
Because people are living longer. Right now the life insurance industry policy projections go out to age 120 because
Really?
More and more people are living beyond age 100. Now why they picked 120 I don't know. But when I first got into business it was like age 80. That was like considered very, very, very maximum. So there's a lot of educational efforts and promotion to talk to your agent and just see what's out there in the way of life insurance.
And I don't know whether you can say this or not, or tell this, but how much should a person really be covered for?
Well, we normally recommend they look at 4 or 5 goals, so to speak. When someone passes away, most people want to have enough money for their final expenses.
Correct.
So you have to look at, cremation versus burial and roughly what the costs were going to be, whether you do or do not have a cemetery plot already. So that's one goal. The second goal would be to pay off your debts. I don't think anybody wants to leave a bunch of bills to their family.
Right.
It'd be nice to know that those would be taken care of. A third goal would be to replace a person's income, or in the case of like a stay-at-home mom, to provide money to do the things that the stay-at-home mom did, and particularly with young children, because quality child care is very expensive, very expensive. And although we tend to focus so much on the, going back to the days of the male being the breadwinner, that's not necessarily true today. And in most households, the female is either a big portion of the breadwinner or provide services raising the family that would be very costly to replace. So that's another goal, is to replace lost income. And then beyond that, it gets into things like if you have a person dependent on you, maybe a disabled relative, you want to provide some money for their care. An education fund for children. If you have children and you feel strongly about higher education, you may want to try to fund part of that. And those are pretty much the main 4 or 5 goals that most people
Which
have.
could be quite hefty. I mean,
Yeah,
although, because everything is, since we were
Right.
kids, things have changed.
It's easily $500,000.
Yeah. Oh, easy.
And,
yeah.
and depending on the type of product and the your own personal health situation, it can be pretty inexpensive. The life insurance industry, when I first got involved, had 2 classes of rates. One was smoker and non-smoker. That was it. Today they have 5 or 6, and depending on if you go through a medical exam and your health history, your family's health history, if you for instance, if you come from a family that's had a lot of heart problems, that could have an impact on your own rates because they look at, well, you could possibly have that too. But there's some very, very inexpensive rates out there for people that are, in very good health. And,
Do you require, does your company require physicals?
depends on the age and the amount of coverage that you're applying for. As a rough rule of thumb, probably under age 50, and for less than 100,000, probably not.
Yeah.
But if you ask for more than 100,000 or you're over age 50, they usually will do what's called a paramedic exam. There's a huge network out there of paramedics, EMTs, nurses that either supplement their income by doing insurance inspections or maybe do that part-time. And the insurance companies will arrange for them to come right to your house. They generally will ask you a series of medical questions. They usually will take a urine sample and a blood sample, and they may weigh you if you look like you need weighed, like I do. And they'll check your blood pressure. And that's paid for by the insurance company. whether you get the insurance or not. And so when you get into much larger amounts, then you get into the full-blown doctor's exam and EKGs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, for even up to $500,000, usually a paramed exam is all you'd have to go through.
I see these, and I think you and I have discussed it before, these interviews with the guy that does Jeopardy.
Oh, Alex Trebek.
Trebek, yeah. Thank you, because I would have never remembered it. And he's always saying, of course, he's a paid spokesperson.
Sure.
He's saying, and you do not have to have insurance, even if you're in your 80s.
Or the exam, you mean.
Your exam, yeah. Did I say inspection? Yeah. Exam. Yeah, and I'm thinking, wow.
Well, there is a market out there of policies that you can apply for. It's called like a guaranteed issue policy. They're generally lower amounts of coverage, and they'll have 3 or 4 major questions.
Let's take this, Chuck. Hi, you're on the air.
This will be short.
Okay.
Is wind damage the same as tornado?
Yes, there's no distinction between tornadoes and wind damage, Sharpie. So if you have wind damage coverage, yes, you've got coverage for a tornado.
I think Sandy got me on wind damage, so I got to make sure, because I'm putting a lot of money in my house, and I don't want it blown across the creek.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you a bit, Sharpie.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sharpie. Good question. Okay.
Back to those policies, they're what we would call guaranteed issue policies, and the one big restriction they have is that normally if you die within the first 2 or 3 years, all they do is give you your money back. So that's kind of how they hedge the bet on being able to get by without giving the exams. And again, they're generally for smaller amounts, 10,000, 20,000, maybe.
I was thinking 25 is what they were promoting or something.
Because when you get into the larger amounts, yeah, they almost always want to have an exam. Anything over 100,000, pretty much.
What about babies? Do you encourage youngsters?
Yes, I do. In fact, one of the things I promote quite a bit is what I call the grandparents policy. I'm a grandparent, and I know that I've given gifts to my grandchildren that probably they don't even remember anymore. You give them a toy at Christmas, and 2 years later it may be broken or they've outgrown it, but you can give and the insurance is never ever cheaper than the day someone is born, because as you age the prices go up. So that first year, it's a wonderful gift that grandparents can give to their grandchildren. The parents own the policy. It's on the life of the grandchild, but the grandparents make the payments as long as they're alive. And then as the grandparents pass on, then usually the parents pick up the policy. And typically you can get a $100,000 whole life policy for around $300 a year. I mean, that's incredibly cheap. And whole life meaning that it'll last their whole life, and it also builds up cash value. So they could use that cash value maybe when they go to college or as a down payment on a house. There's a lot of different options. But one of the big reasons that I believe in buying life insurance on new babies is to protect their future insurability. Because although we're living longer, it seems like we're discovering more diseases, and even young people end up with certain diseases that make them uninsurable or very, very expensive. And everybody's going to need life insurance at some point in their life. Why not buy it when it's the cheapest possible? So it's a wonderful thing for grandparents to do to their grandchildren. So.
I know when I was a baby, which was 100 years ago, my parents had life insurance on me, and I don't know why they did it, but that back in there, you're talking the late 40s and early 50s, and so when I looked into it years later, and you might understand it a lot better than I do, Chuck. I know you would, but it seemed like it had gone down in value big time. It was down to like this, probably when I was little, it was more. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, a lot of those policies were kind of like a decreasing term, maybe. And
probably very cheap. Back in those
days. They were, and a lot of the policies that were sold back then were basically to cover the cost of final expenses. Because you can imagine how devastating it would be to lose a child, but then to have to write a check and make payments for a funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be awful. So
Yeah.
that was one big reason they bought it back then
Okay.
too. But today I do it to protect their future insurability, because that's huge. I mean, even if they, God forbid, the baby at 5 years old gets cancer, he's still got a life insurance policy that he's going to have all of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a vital thing for grandparents to do for grandkids.
And today, you know, and we have to move on here in a second, but health insurance.
Okay, we've got open enrollment coming up on the Medicare Advantage plans. That'll start October 15th. We have the so-called Obamacare policy open enrollment coming up on, I think it's November 15th. So there's going to be a lot of activity this fall in both the Medicare policies and the Obamacare policy.
How's the Obamacare thing going for you?
Oh boy. It's actually gotten a little bit better. What's still troubling is that there's still provisions that will be kicking in for the next 2 years. We have no idea what's going to happen to pricing next year. Depending on the elections, we have no idea if Obamacare will be repealed, tweaked, adjusted. I don't know. And as an insurance agent, I've always taken comfort in trying to somewhat predict what can happen in the future. You know, car insurance rates are going to do this, house insurance rates are going to do that, but with health care, I have no idea at all.
It's gotten to the point where it's over my head now.
Well, the enrollment process has got a little bit better, but it's still very confusing, and I had clients get enrolled.
When you speak of enrollment, does that mean you have to do it then?
Yes. Well, that's the top. You can only enroll certain periods of time during the year for a health insurance policy. So if you have a healthy young male who says, "Oh, I don't need it," during the enrollment period, and then he starts thinking, "Well, maybe April or May, yeah, I want to get a policy," you can't do it.
I guess I never knew that.
No. Well, that's what's changed. Unless you have what they call a qualifying life event, and a qualifying life event could be losing your health care coverage, marriage, moving to a different state. But so they've actually frozen the period of time when you can get a policy. And but the enrollment process has gotten better, but still the follow-up. There's a lot of follow-up, and I had one my customers at my mentor office that I got enrolled, and she's a U.S. citizen, born and raised in America. She had to show proof of citizenship through her passports. I mean, it's just convoluted. It really is. So. But it is what it is, Pat.
I know.
Got to learn to deal with it. So.
By the way, I get more comments about your granddaughter Maria,
Oh, okay.
and everybody's asking. We want to see what she looks like today.
I know.
I
Well,
think they're due to get her in there, and
I've been mulling around in my mind thoughts for a new commercial, but it's just like I said, this year has just
it's flown
flown
away.
by, and
Yeah.
we've been extremely busy in our business this year. And it's,
How old is she now?
she'll be 10 this year. Yeah.
I wonder how old she was in that picture.
You know, I don't know. I'd have to look and see, Pat.
I've had her on the show. She's a sweetheart. She sometimes calls me and
Oh,
says
I know
hello.
she loves calling you.
Yeah, she's a good girl.
So I've got a bucket list of things to do, and that's one of them. But
And then you got to
unfortunately,
write the script too. Right?
yeah, well, I have in the past, and but you know, between trying to cut the grass and between the raindrops,
All summer long.
yeah, and all the other things, it just sometimes there's not enough hours in a day. But I'm gonna work on that. I
Okay,
really am.
real good, real good. We all want to thank you for the coffee you brought in and the donuts
Okay,
this
good.
morning. I'm going to
Yeah.
cheat and have a donut this morning.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Chuck. Let's not stay away so
I
long.
know.
And I'll be getting in touch with you too.
Okay,
So
good.
you and I got to talk anyway.
All right,
So,
very good.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Chuck.